All right, we are live. Welcome to Social Business Hour on this June 1st. It is Monday, June 1st. I am Brian Fanzo, better known as iSocialFans on the Twitters. And as many of you know, for well over a year now, if you are joining us on Mondays at 4 p.m., I am joined by my co-host, the wonderful Rachel Miller. How are you doing today, Rachel?
I am fantastic, Brian. How are you? I think actually the community is way more concerned about you right now than they are about me.
Well, I can tell you that I can fast tweet still. That was a concern that seemed to be bothering people, but only from my phone because I did unfortunately dislocate three of my fingers falling out of my truck before I was moving. I fell onto a hitch and a little bit of a drama there. So I'm actually in my moving truck outside of Dallas, Texas, on my way making it back from the great state of Arizona on the way to Virginia. And thank you, everybody, for the concerns. And actually, the interesting part about that is our guest is also an Arizona fan, but also someone that left Arizona fairly recently. So, without further ado, Jay Baer, welcome to Social Business Hour.
Thank you, my friend. Sorry about your sizable boo-boo there. This is, of all the podcasts and chats I've done in my illustrious and lengthy career, I think this is the first time I've done it with somebody in a moving truck and somebody with such a fantastic haircut like Rachel. Your hair is awesome. I want my hair to look like Rachel's. It is beautiful.
Oh, that's the nicest compliment I've received on Social Business Hour. So
it is gorgeous.
Way to set the bar high. Thank you, sir.
Well,
where in Virginia are you moving, buddy? I can't remember.
So outside of Richmond. So I figure I've covered the whole state. I went to high school in Virginia Beach, college at Radford, worked in the Pentagon in Northern Virginia. So now I'm going to cover Richmond, and I'll be actually about 45 minutes from Marcus Sheridan. So it'll be right down the street.
That's his hood, and we'll be out there in the fall. My daughter's looking at colleges out there, so I'll make sure we hook up.
All right, let's do that for sure. So we're excited to have you here, Jay. Of course, everyone who watches our show knows about you. Since I don't have the books behind me now, but the two books that have been behind me since we started this show has been Utility and Jab, 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 Right Hook. And
nice.
I've always kind of called those two out as not only two books that greatly influenced me. I was actually reading them both at the same time about 4 years ago or so when it came out. And I remember reading them and completely changing my philosophy on social and content and really the whole value. And I know since then I've been very blessed to not only get to know you a little bit better, but think of you as a friend and a mentor. So not only am I excited to have you on, but I know the community is excited to hear about you. So let us know what the latest and greatest. I know you had Utility, and then you did some other utility versions specialized, and then I also got to meerkat your very first Hug Your Haters social media marketing role. So give us a little background about what the latest is, and then we'll jump into question one.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, so I'm right now writing my new book called Hug Your Haters: How to Embrace Complaints and Keep Your Customers. It's going to do for customer service what Utility did for content marketing, I hope, which is make people understand that a customer you keep is so much more important than a customer you get, and that there are lots and lots of ways to improve customer service, but it's gotten a lot more difficult because of the rise of social media, of smartphones, of channel proliferation. It's really challenging, but man, I'm so excited for this book. I did 7 hours on it yesterday and 7 hours the day before, and it's just, there's so many amazing case studies and examples and interviews and quotes. I did 70 interviews for the book, and it's just chock full of content. I'm super, super fired up for it. It'll be out early next year. People can buy books now, though. There's a whole pre-order thing at hugyourhaters.com, which is kind of a tragic website that I built myself, so don't take it out on me. But it is very much an alpha website, but people can still get books. And if you buy books now, I'll actually put your name in the book. I got a whole section to acknowledge the pre-order crowd, so knock yourselves out.
Well, I can tell you that the alpha website did not shield me from purchasing it, so I got me a copy. So
I saw your name in the database. It will be coming to your Virginia residence at some point when the book actually exists.
I love it. And I know, I think this whole, not only Hug Your Haters, but the story. And I had to represent. I had a Hootsuite shirt on yesterday, and I had to wear a Buffer shirt today because I know you're also invested and work with those guys, and they have some of the best customer service, in my opinion, across the board when it comes to engagement. And even when you don't mention them, we just happened to have an Instagram post today, someone just said buffer, wasn't tagged, and it was probably 35 seconds. And they liked it, commented, said thank you for wearing the shirt, and those kind of things. I think we'll get into that, but I think that's just a great example of this. So I know, Rachel and I have some questions for you. Rachel, do we want to get in question one?
Yeah, let's kick it off. I'll share them out in the community. Question one: Hug versus shrug. Can we really embrace all of our haters?
Well, it's a great question to start with, because I think it would be a good idea to tell people what it means when I say hug your haters. So there's a very specific recipe in the book, and that is that you should answer every complaint in every channel every time. Every complaint, every channel, every time. Now, that doesn't mean that haters are always right, but it does mean that everybody should be heard. So does that require resources? Yeah. Does it require time? Absolutely. Does it probably require more time and resources than you're spending now in customer service, both online and offline? Yes, it does. But that resource allocation absolutely makes business sense. There's tons of examples in the book of organizations making real money, huge customer retention rates, things like that, by putting more emphasis on answering complaints from customers that they've already spent money to acquire. I just think it's good business.
And I think actually what's important that you said there is that they need to respond on the channel where it came in. And I think a lot of people try and sidestep that and quickly go behind doors, and I think it actually looks more impressive and it actually shuts people down faster if they are saying negative things if you respond publicly.
Well, of course, because customer service is a spectator sport now, right? It's yes, there's still people call and people email, and in fact, our research shows that more people call and email than interact with companies in public still, although that balance is shifting as more and more people use social media and even public things like Yelp and TripAdvisor, etc. You're seeing a shift toward public customer service and away from private customer service. But even so, there's still a lot of private interactions today. But all the public stuff, I mean, it's not so much about making that person happy. Of course, you want to try and make that person happy. But it's more about what does it say about your business to everybody else who's looking on from afar. There's a great quote in the book from Dave Kirpin from Likeable, and he says, "Not responding is a response. And it's a response that says, I don't care about you."
Right. It's the worst response ever.
Yeah.
Well, you said the word acknowledge, and I for the longest time have said that the favorite button on Twitter, I call it the fist bump, because I call it the acknowledgement. If I favorite something, I'm acknowledging it. It's not really what that button was made for, but that's kind of how I.
Rachel, are you with me?
I am, yes. I was
Okay.
waiting to see if you would ping back.
I've lost a little bit of the Brian.
Oh, he forgot to share that he is outside of a restaurant, I think was his Wi-Fi connection of
He's
convenience.
using the Wi-Fi from a Wendy's somewhere in the southeast, so that could be part of the problem
If they're
here.
watching, we need to shoot over some more bandwidth in his area.
I should. While we're waiting for him to circle back, I should tell you that one of the things I think is really interesting about this book is that I conducted a really comprehensive research study with the guys at Edison Research, which is one of the most noteworthy research organizations in the country. Some of you may know Tom Webster, who's kind of the public face of that organization, an author in his own right, very active in social, speaker, and those kind of things. And so Edison and me and Convince and Convert partnered, and we surveyed thousands of Americans and figured out where they hate, how they hate, why they hate. If somebody complains on Facebook, for example, what's their expectation of a response versus somebody who complains via email? What are the differences if that person's 25 or 55? What if that person's a Latino or is black? What if that person has a smartphone or a tablet? So we have unbelievable amounts of data, something like 700 pages of data that's forming the basis of this book. So Hug Your Haters isn't like your typical customer service book, which is, hey, don't point at somebody, say thank you. Like, there's a lot of customer service books out there that are just platitudes. It's not about that. It's about what's happening right now in the real world, backed by an unbelievable research project.
I would be really curious to know like what the standout data points were, because it'd be easy to assume with the number of communication channels we have now that you would expect complaints and negativity to be on the rise. But is that necessarily the case? They are?
Well, it's such an interesting question, and I just wrote this chapter yesterday, so it's super fresh in my mind. So mathematically, yes, there are more complaints than ever. But that's because it's so much easier to complain on this, a tweet, a Facebook post, a Yelp, whatever, a Yelp 5 stars, as opposed to sitting down and crafting an entire email or calling and waiting on hold, right? So technology has taken the friction out of the feedback process. So yes, there are more complaints than ever, but, and here's the really important but, much of what we consider to be complaints today would have just been comments yesterday, or would not have even been worthy of communication yesterday.
Would have taken too much effort.
Exactly. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that are basically like, oh, that kind of sucks. That now, because you have the tools to do so, you actually will reach out and say that, right? So if you're at a restaurant, if you're at the Wendy's that Brian is hijacking their Wi-Fi, and you don't get enough ice in your drink, like 3 years ago you would have been like, oh, that blows, I wish I had more ice. Now, especially if you're sort of a social media person, you might tweet that and be like, hey, Wendy's, what's with the, why you shorting me on ice? That now becomes a complaint that brand has to deal with. And so, is there way more volume now? Absolutely. But the true like complaints like, oh, wow, this is something we really got to pay attention to, probably hasn't changed all that much. It's just that it's all public now, so you got to get involved in it.
Right. I think that's a big, a clarification that people should take note of, because I think that scares a lot of people. It's like, well, if we're going to be on Twitter, then we're opening ourselves up. You have to just take note that you're really going to get the same amount of, the worst ever feedback. And as we'll discuss later, it's actually awesome when people do take the time to send you an email with a crafted message to say how much you suck, versus just like, I need more ice. And I think that's
but I do think though, and what we say in the book is that even if somebody says I need more ice, you should answer that. You should,
of course,
you should answer everybody, and because not just because it's the right thing to do, because it feels good, because it has a direct business benefit. Our research shows that if you answer somebody's complaint in social, even if it's something minor, it has a material impact on their customer advocacy, right? It's like 20% or more, right? It literally creates loyalty by answering somebody's complaint in social media, or phone, or email, or discussion boards, or forums, or review sites, anywhere that someone complains. If you answer their complaint, it makes them a better customer, period.
Brian, you're in twice. Yep, did I mute the wrong one? All right, we're going to power through. So I think a lot of what we're talking about kind of leads to a mindset shift. Like, people need to get more excited about negative feedback than perhaps they would have historically, just due to the sheer volume. So how can businesses train employees, and how can we as individuals kind of change our mindset to deal more effectively with negative feedback?
Yeah, you nailed it, right? Negative feedback is the best kind of feedback, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but positive, I mean, what do you learn from positive feedback? Nothing. Like, you already know what you're good at, so somebody echoing that back to you in telephone or email or social doesn't really make you any better. It just confirms what you already know.
Right.
Negative feedback has huge opportunities to uncover things that you can use to improve your business. So there's a chain of restaurants called Le Pain Quotidien, and they've got about 200 locations around the world. They're based in Brussels, Belgium, and they noticed that people were complaining about their lemonade, and they were complaining on phone and email and Yelp and Twitter and like all over lemonade, lemonade, lemonade. And their global director of customer experience saw these and was like, well, wait a second, like we've never had like these weird lemonade complaints. In fact, people usually say our lemonade's awesome. Like, what's the deal? And so she kind of gathered them together and sent them to the corporate chef, right? And so then he was like, well, what is the deal? And then he started following their supply chain and realized that in certain locations, the local chef were not batching the ingredients properly, and so it was causing this really weird taste in the lemonade that because it wasn't being made right. And so, like, if you're not paying attention, you never understand that, right? You never get a chance to fix that. And so think about how many people just had lemonade they didn't like and just said, screw that place, I'm not going back. The people who took their time, who went out of their way to complain, those are the people who are helping you save your business, right? Look, the haters are not the problem. Ignoring them is the problem. The people who are really the problem are what we call in the book the meh in the middle. The people who are just like, whatever, these guys suck, and they never say a word. They just poof, disappear.
Yeah, if they take the time to share their feedback, they care, and those are the people who will eventually become your most powerful advocates. Like they're going to stand up again, probably as in your favor when the time is right. So no, definitely.
Yeah, it doesn't happen every time, right? But certainly, and there's tons of research to suggest this. It doesn't happen every time, but the people who are the most angry can, as you say, Rachel, can become your best customers if you help them appropriately. In fact, there's an interview I did with James Deegan, who's the head of customer support for Xbox. And Xbox does an amazing, amazing, amazing job with Twitter customer service. And he said, literally, the people who are most important to us are the people who are the angriest, who are the craziest, right? Who are the trolls and the haters. Those are the most important people, because then if we can turn those people around, we can turn anybody around.
So I think for me, like the worst part of this increase in the, I guess we'll call it the fluffy negative, is just the toll it takes on your personnel. Like your customer service team is just exhausted having to deal with these trolls. Like how do you, it's a unique individually that can day in, day out, tweet back all these like, so sorry about the ice.
Yeah, you just got to get more people is what it comes down to in most organizations, right? You just have to add resources. Which is unpleasant, but if you understand that answering complaints has a direct and material impact on customer value, well, then it becomes really easy. Everybody we help becomes a better customer. Therefore, if we need to add more people in order to do that, of course you would do that, right? If think about it this way, if every time you answered somebody's complaint they sent you $10, you would hire customer service people as fast as you possibly could. But that's actually what happens. You just don't get the $10 in the mail. They just end up buying more stuff from you.
Right, which is way more.
Yeah, everybody you help becomes a better customer, unless people are just like, look, I'm done with these guys. But on average, everybody you help becomes a better customer. So if you need to add more reps, add more reps. One of the case studies in the book is from KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines. They have 150 people that answer customer service complaints and questions just in social. That's not counting phone and email. 150 people. They answer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in 14 different languages. If you tweet them about a lost bag in Turkish, they will answer you back within 15 minutes in Turkish, even if it's 3 in the morning. But they've tracked it.
What about if I tweet Buffalo Wild Wings because their Wi-Fi did not stand up as I was hijacking it in the parking lot?
I don't know. Let's try
it. So you were talking about the meh in the middle. Do you address the meh in the middle as far as how people kind of not only deal with the haters, but how they bridge from the haters to the advocates?
Well, usually the way I define the meh in the middle in the book are the people who don't say anything, right? They're invisible, so they don't complain, they don't leave a review. They just walk out and never come back, and so they're really, really dangerous because you can't find them, right? There's no hand raise. They're just gone. And that's why that's a really scary part of your business. That's why the people who actually take time to complain are so important, right? Because they're actually going on the record. They're giving you an opportunity to do something about it. The meh in the middle just leaves.
but they'll tell 5 friends about the experience they had. So
Or
really,
more,
it's targeting
right? Or
that
more.
group is critically important because you want to encourage them to give feedback, positive or negative.
Right. No, that's exactly right, Rachel. It's like, and it's so, the relationship here is really hard because, yes, doing this well takes time and resources, but yes, you absolutely want to encourage feedback. Like, the best case scenario is that every single customer you have goes on record and says, here's how my experience went. And what that does is then creates more things for you to address. You're like, oh my God, I'm creating all these problems for myself, but it's not a problem, right? It's an opportunity, and that's the part that I hope the book really helps people with, is understanding that this is not a cost, right? It's actually, customer service is not a cost center. Customer service is a profit center if you do it right.
Which comes back to that mindset shift, because I don't think that's kind of the common theory right now. It seems to most people operate them as a loss.
Definitely not.
So, and also it requires process. So in the example that you gave with the restaurant with the lemonade, that's a scalable process. Like, how are they flagging all of those comments for the lemonade not being perfect?
The nice thing is that, especially for onstage, what we call onstage haters, which are people who complain in public, especially for onstage haters, there's a lot of software now out there that is really set to do that. So LPQ uses New Brand, which is a terrific software package that's really built for social media customer service. Sprout Social is one of my partners. They're really good at the social media customer service side. Yext for smaller businesses is really good at it. Dave Kirpin's Likeable Local software is really good. So there's lots of different packages now that are available to help flag, make sense of, pull business insights out of onstage complaints. There are other packages that will do that offstage, right? That will say, hey, read all the emails that come into the company, and then basically do a word cloud of those emails. Like, that software exists. Same kind of thing with phone calls. They can listen, transcribe, pull insights out. It's a little tougher at scale, but there are companies that do that as well.
So I'm curious, so I know the examples have been a lot of B2C, but I know with B2B, B2B software, so I'm a big fan of Mixpanel, because I regularly audit customers, but I also look in the application to see what they're using, and there's often some discrepancies. So you'll see that the feedback you get from a feature that's highly used will have a higher percentage of negative feedback, but it's also your most popular. So it's hard. You have to make sure you keep your data points straight. Say, well,
some of it's just math, right?
Right, exactly. And there's something that's never used, but the 5 people that used it thought it was fantastic, but only 5 people are using it. So
that's why I really like tools like G2 Crowd and those kind of things, which kind of tap into that.
G2 Crowd fan.
So they kind of tap into that whole thing. One of the examples that I talk about a lot in the book for B2B is Spiceworks, right? That's such an awesome community of technologists and B2B software players, right? Where it's reviews and ratings, but also a super active set of discussion boards and forums, and so all these companies, Cisco and Oracle and all these guys, Microsoft, they all have people, like real people, reps who are just in there, and that's almost their whole job, is to just be part of this community and answer questions and sort of be the public face of that organization, which I think is just really, really smart business.
I wonder if you feel like because I really don't like that all these software companies are trying to be the one-click button that solves all of the world's problems with all technology. I wonder with this kind of technology and understanding, they would start to understand, back to Rachel's point, if the featured products are really where you should pay most of your attention to, why do you have 3,000 different options in your tool instead of just focusing on what you're really good at? Then you could really probably scale that effort to support that. Do you think this will have kind of an adverse effect onto how companies build their products out of, based on that now they'll be able to almost understand their feedback at a more granular level?
Well, I certainly hope so. And if you're paying attention to the feedback that people are providing for you in either a B2B or a B2C context, you should be able to make a more coherent set of product decisions. And smart companies, in fact, many of the companies that I profile in the book, are doing that, right? They're using haters to help drive product roadmap, which is exactly what you should do. Of course, that's what you should do. But when I say that, you're like, well, yeah, but almost nobody actually does it.
Well, and I think that's.
I mean, G2 Crowd and GetApp have really kind of changed that third-party review game, because you have to legitimate yourself, if that's a word, you log in with LinkedIn, so you're a real person, and we will follow up. So, and I follow up with those, the angry people, because those are the ones like, you give me 1 star, like, I want to make your day and find out how we can make the tool better for you. And I think when you go to some review sites and it's all anonymous, it's hard to really take that data seriously.
Yeah, anonymity is definitely a challenge in terms of giving companies what they need to really answer back and understand what's really happening. But I still feel like you should at least go to the trouble of answering once, right? Even if you can't get what you need out of that exchange, at least you're on record for everybody else who's going to see it, like, oh, they did care enough to at least reply.
Right. Or Quora. I think that happens a lot on Quora. People forget about it. And you log in as a brand, you're like, holy crap.
Where'd all this come from? Yeah.
It's like DEFCON 5 over here.
Yeah, I mean, having some push mechanisms would really help. And one of the challenges, I don't want to get too nerdy here, but one of the challenges that companies face is that some of those places don't have great APIs, right? So Quora, Yelp, TripAdvisor, right? Their APIs really are not what you would want in order to kind of put into a solid kind of alert mechanism or push notifications, or the kind of things that we just take for granted. Like, hey, somebody mentioned me on Twitter and I get pinged. Like, we're like, well, of course. But that's not an of course situation in some of these other places, especially when you get these kind of, I don't want to say small, but smaller, very vertical communities. So there's one that I talked about in the book, which is just the ratings and review community and discussion boards just for plastic surgery. So if you're like, hey, should I have the tummy tuck? You can go in there and it's like, here's ratings and reviews about it, and then every doctor who does it in the country has a 1 to 5 rating, just like an Uber driver. Like, who do you want to have do your tummy tuck? Now, that's a very specific community, but if you're about to spend like $6,000 to get a tummy tuck, hell yeah, you're reading that forum. You're reading every post. But again, they don't necessarily have a commented out, documented API where the doctor can get a push notification that somebody just mentioned him.
So what role does transparency and self-awareness play in the brands that are willing to hug your haters? I almost feel like you almost have to not only be self-aware, but also a transparent concept where you understand what other people want and you're willing to admit what you're not good at. And I think that's the scary part. Is that a link to those that are doing that?
I mean, I certainly talked about that a lot in Utility. This concept of differentiating your business by being open and honest and transparent, because it builds trust, and there's no doubt that is true. And I think the best companies in sort of postmodern customer service absolutely do that. They acknowledge their shortcomings. They sort of give you a peek behind the curtain. But I'm not suggesting that you have to do that in order to be successful. I would just be delighted if people actually took the time to answer complaints. Those who answer complaints and then are also transparent and self-aware would be awesome. But that's definitely some next level shit.
Well, and I think that's part of it. I guess that's part of the it's small steps to change. So I agree, because I think part of me worries because I feel like they should have been hugging their haters when it wasn't in a public setting, but they had no driving force or reason really to make them do that. And now I feel like it's the opposite. Now not only do you have a driving force, but if you're not doing it, you're going to be out of business sooner than later.
Hey man, it's like people not making their website mobile friendly until Google made them. It's the same thing.
I mean, I even to find Wi-Fi today, I went online to find rated Wi-Fi locations in the Dallas area for different businesses. I mean, that's how crowdsourcing thinking I went into. And I think if companies are, if you want to attract people because of your Wi-Fi, you probably should search that to make sure that people aren't bashing your company, your business's Wi-Fi, because I'm going to eat lunch at Buffalo Wild Wings, right? I mean, like, I think it's something to think about.
Right. It's like sit or squat. It's like sit or squat for Wi-Fi, like stream or flee or something like that. I don't know.
I like it.
All right, so at least we're talking about technology. So I think technology has definitely enabled our need for more attention, faster responses, the network of my choice. So how can businesses keep up with demand? It's like people want like video customer service like 5 minutes after they put in their ticket. I mean, where is the middle ground where everybody can be happy?
Yeah, a couple things. One, we've got amazing data that'll be in the book about what people really do expect, right? And so there's a lot of kind of chatter out there about speed expectations. I'll tell you what the baseline data is. 39% of the people who complain in social expect a response within an hour. So it's almost half, 39%. But that varies quite a bit by industry. So your expectation for a response from your cable company versus your bank versus Buffalo Wild Wings versus whatever, we have all that data because we did all the research by industry. So that'll be pretty interesting to parse in the book. So number one, you don't, it's not universally true for each business. Different companies, customers have different expectations of those companies. The other piece is to really understand, okay, how do you stack rank complaints? So is it first in, first answered? Is it first in, first answered based on what their actual issues are, which is how I think you should do it? Triage based on content. Is it first in, first out based on clout score, right? Which people still do that all the time in a social media context. I don't personally think that's a very good way to run your customer service department, but a lot of people do. So you have to figure out, all right, how do you, if you get 100 things in the next 2 minutes, which ones do you answer first? And maybe it just is. This is the first one that came in, but maybe there's something else there.
Or what about the reputation of the person complaining? I think, factoring in the fact that, is that person also complained 13 other times that, that ended up not being a valid concern? I mean, I wonder where that comes into it as well. Because I even talk about, in some of these communities, these Periscope and Meerkat, I think they should rank you should be able to rank the commenters on how good someone is at commenting, or how, their value to you as the streamer. So I think it's almost kind of like there almost should be even I hate to say VIP or score downwards, but I think there also is a score because I mean some of these brands. I mean Buffer is a good example. When you comment and you suggest a feature on Buffer, you can almost tell in Buffer the people that are doing lots of those comments because of the amount of response that they're getting. So I think that prioritization is definitely going to be I'm sure a struggle and a hurdle that people are asking you. What's the best way to solve that?
Yeah, it is, and the good news is that it's company specific. The bad news is that it's company specific, right? It just makes it harder because you have to write your own recipe. We're doing a bunch of consulting now at Convince to Convert around this topic called an honesty audit, where we go in and look at a cross section of all the complaints that come in to a business on phone, email, social, discussion boards, forums, all that, and then figure out what the tone and tenor of those complaints are, what the expectations of those customers are, and then sort of build that triage roadmap of here's what you do first, second, third, fourth. But you really, I mean, we have a process that we do to execute it, but you have to do it on a company-specific basis because everybody's customers are different.
No, I think it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, I think a general process that you can use is kind of like a framework. But I know, for an example, that I know Lyft kind of has a passenger grading system they use that to then correlate the data that they get from the reviews that as a passenger you submit about the driver and your experience. I think that's really smart because you can't just take someone's shitty review, but then be like, well, turns out that passenger was kind of an a-hole. So.
Yeah, and it happens on Amazon all the time, right? Somebody leaves a 1-star review on Amazon, and you look and you realize that they only leave 1-star reviews.
Right, exactly.
You're like,
or that person was
differently.
Or that person was an Uber driver, right? And they were just leaving you the 1-star because they wanted to sabotage the Lyft side of the house. I think that's an interesting discussion. I also think it's interesting when you're talking about hugging your haters and understanding that not only the transparency but the data. When you're talking about the data. Does that data scare anybody when you're doing all that research? The fact that I know it's public data, but part of that is you're exposing some of their public concerns that they were never addressing in the first place. Was that something that was has been brought up along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. But the nice thing is, Edison is, a very well-respected research organization, and so they certainly, they do all the presidential polls and things like that. So they're certainly very adept at asking people to provide sensitive information and do it in a way that they're comfortable with. We actually talked about people and said, okay, what was the last business you complained about, and how did you complain, and how fast did you want them to get back to you, and how did that make you feel, and literally had people kind of walk through their story of their last problem. We did that 2,100 times, right? So we got an unbelievable amount of stuff.
So also sharing the data is important too, because I like participating in surveys. So if you're a business and you send me one, I'll 9 times out of 10 I actually will complete your survey, but I never get the results back. It's probably
Right.
like 1
Isn't
in
that
10.
annoying?
I'm like,
It's so
hey,
annoying.
that was actually interesting. Like, what happened to that data?
Yeah, it's really annoying. And you know, there's a whole part in the book that I'm going to write up. I have the notes. I haven't written this part yet, but it's this concept that people say, well, we've got a survey, right? So like, as somehow that absolves them of being good at customer service because they have some like, you know, crap survey that they send out to people. And you know, most surveys are not worth the time it takes to create them because they're not statistically valid. They're self-selected participation. They're not analyzed well. The data goes into a black hole. Nobody in the business ever sees it or does anything about it. Usually it's just a Band-Aid at best. I complained about my experience at the MGM Grand Hotel a couple weeks ago. I did a Jay Today video about it, and they sent me a survey link, as hotels do. And normally I'm like, whatever, I don't have time for this, but I was already like up to here with those guys. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take their survey just to see what their survey is. 61 screens, and it took me 33 minutes to complete the survey for a regular hotel stay. So in my comments, I was like, I just want to let you know that this is probably the worst survey I've ever seen, and the fact that you're paying a third party to administer this, you guys are getting robbed. This is, I said, does anybody ever complete this? Has anybody ever seen this actual screen 61 of the survey? I feel like I'm like planting a flag in ground that's never been trod upon before. I mean, it was unbelievable, right?
Well, you
It's
know what?
just crazy.
I wonder if they do that on purpose, though, because if you think about it, by giving you 61 screens, eventually you just get burnt out, and the amount of negative feedback that they actually receive probably goes down, because if they had a one-page survey, of course more people would go up. But I'm curious on, was there any discussion kind of on the demographic or type of customer from the audience would feel? Because I think like the millennial side, there is an element. I talked about Penske. My radio and my cigarette light adapter does not work in my car. I DM'd them yesterday at noon, and I went out and said, you know, I was talking about it on a podcast this morning. I said, I'm giving them 24 hours privately before I put anything on public blast. So 24 hours with no DM, I put them on blast today at noon and said, hey, this is ridiculous. I rented a vehicle. So I think, you know, like for me, that was my way of saying, like, hey, I'm going to give, and I'm in the industry as well. So I'm curious from the millennial perspective versus someone that's targeting a non-millennial, does the approach differ a little bit, or I know eventually everyone's going to have a millennial customer.
It does. So what we found in the research is that there's two types of haters. You have offstage haters, which are people that complain in private. So maybe it's a DM, and maybe it's an email, it's a phone call. Typically, it's not on public blast. Then you have onstage haters, which are people who are complaining in a public venue. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, etc., Yelp, TripAdvisor, discussion boards, forums, whatever. What we find is that people who complain in private want an answer. People who complain in public typically want an audience, right? They are trying to extract revenge. And your example is perfect, because what we find in many, many cases, people go public after they've tried private and they've been totally dissatisfied with the results. So what I talk about in the book, and I think it's a really compelling concept, is that if you don't handle your offstage haters well, what you do is you create onstage haters, right? People always complain like, oh, social media makes people complain. Yeah, there's some truth to that. But what's more true is that you suck at offline customer service, and that's why people are lighting you up online. Not because, you know, Twitter's not your problem, right? The fact that your company sucks is your problem. You are blaming the messenger here, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, your example and how you went through that is absolutely typical. Now, what we found though is, and this will not come as a surprise, the younger you are, the more likely you are to use an onstage public venue as your first point of contact, right? Because younger people are much more comfortable just tweeting as the first point, as opposed to let me sit down and craft a whole email, or let me call somebody, right? So the thing, you know, youthfulness is a correlation to onstage, and the other thing that's really interesting is smartphone usage definitely correlates to onstage hating as well. But the number one thing that tells whether or not you're an onstage or an offstage hater in general, and how much you complain in general, is social media usage. The more active you are in social, the more likely you are to complain, period. It's like literally a lockstep relationship. So as you use social media more, you complain more. Why? Because you have the tools to do it in your hands all the time.
Well, you know what? And me as a complainer in this situation with Penske, I also took the next step and I looked up and I searched in Twitter to find out who else was also complaining about Penske. And there was a lot of people that had created brand new Twitter accounts.
Rachel, can you hear Brian? I'm not getting his audio.
Oh, could you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear him.
Oh. So there was people that were actually creating Twitter accounts to complain to Penske, and I kind of felt like my complaint almost gets lumped in with those other ones, where if they had realized that I don't complain about brands very often.
Oh, Jay, I think you muted him.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, no, I was just, you got muted somehow.
Now I'm not hearing Rachel either. Okay.
Well, I had a great question. Well, we have a question from Twitter. So, Brian, if you can hear me, I'll ask you.
Okay.
So, for marketing hits, should companies use brand social profiles or a real person employee profile when replying to complaints?
Ooh, I love that. Great question, Brian Yarnish.
Okay.
Did you hear that question, Jay?
No, my headphones were off for a second. Go hit me again.
Okay, so it is a solid question that plays into what we're talking about. Should companies use the brand social profile or a real person, employee profile when replying to complaints?
Well, it depends on the channel, and it's usually, in many cases, dictated by the channel itself, other than in social. So, in almost every case, other than a discussion board or a forum, it should come from the brand. But as many people have seen, it's a nice touch if you have the characters in something like Twitter to actually say whom it is, right? It's whether it's initials or first name, just so you know there's a real person there. That's usually the best practice.
I love the follow-up from a person's account. On the employee advocacy side, when I work with them on that side, I even teach from a social selling side that if you as a social seller see that your brand had to reach out to one of your clients or prospects and help solve a problem, it's a great aspect now to take you as a person and say, hey, I hope we solved that. Is there anything more I can do to become your advocate for it? But I love that I agree, because what they're going to search, what I searched Penske complaints. I didn't search Penske employees' names complaints, and that's really, at the end of the day, what matters there.
Yep, you bet.
So I have a question regarding service and support strategy or perhaps process. So in a former life, I actually did customer service training, and it was always a struggle educating people on the time to, like, the TTR to specific networks. They're like, well, the ticket comes in, whether it's on Twitter or an email, and we just answer them in a queue. But if someone's tweeting, they're expecting you to respond faster than if they emailed. How do you kind of craft strategy to make that make sense to people in a support environment?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, and those differences are big and getting bigger. People expect faster response in everything, but the difference between a social media expectation, which, as I mentioned, is 39% less than an hour, and an email expectation, which is, I think, 4 hours is our data on that, somewhere in that ballpark, is huge, right? I mean, it's massive. So, you should never have a blended triage system that takes people and stack ranks them by input time, regardless of channel. If you can't separate them in columns, you should at least be able to flag them so you know where they came from. That's definitely the way to go. And then the other part is, you answered your own question, Rachel. You just have to train people to say, look, and not only is it time, it's just how you handle it, right? I mean, how you handle an on-stage complaint versus how you handle an off-stage complaint is massively different. And it should be different, and you have to train people to do it differently. In fact, many of the companies that I talked to for the book have different teams, right? So they have an email phone team, and then they have a social team, and it's a different skill set in many ways.
It truly is, and by the way, I am loving this on stage, off stage. I think that makes so much more sense than offline and online because it implies the audience. I think that's genius.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, and I agree with on the idea of not only off and on, but what things have to be in place for a business to be able to implement this? Because I don't think this is, we talk about the word social business. I think that's too broad of a term. But what things need to be in place for a business to truly be able to embrace this kind of philosophy?
Well, to truly hug your haters, you need a few things. First, you have to culturally believe that a customer saved is more important than a customer gained. You have to understand and acknowledge the fact that answering somebody's complaint creates customer advocacy, and not answering somebody's complaint diminishes customer advocacy across all channels, right? So you have to believe the data that I will put into this book. So you have to culturally believe it, you have to believe the operational level data, then you have to actually put the appropriate resources in place to actually do this, right? If I'm going to say you got to answer every complaint, somebody has to do that, right? And some software can help you and all that, but it still takes bodies, and so you have to fund this in a way that makes sense. And then you have to have some sort of protocol and process in the organization in order to do it day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. The things that Rachel was just asking about. If a question comes in from here, who answers it and in what sequence? If a question comes in here, who answers it and in what sequence, right? And so you just have to have playbooks and frameworks that allow you to do this at speed. But look, it's not easy, right? If it was easy, I wouldn't have to write a book about it. But it's totally doable, right? You look at what KLM does, you look at what Discover does, you look at what Century 21 does. I mean, there's lots of examples out there of companies that just crush it with this. But they are aligned around it culturally, and they've put a ton of money against it, right? It's not, you can't say we're going to be the best in the world at customer service and not put money against it. Can't have it both ways.
Completely agree. So we like to end the show on sort of a crystal ball predictions for the future note. I tweaked it a little bit this time. So question 5 is, if you could, wrinkle your nose, snap your fingers, wave a magic wand, what's one thing about business today that you would change and why?
I'll kind of go back to a similar theme. I would change the way people think about business and what makes a business good and successful. I wish people understood that the customers you already have are so much more important than the customers you might get. And that's certainly true in a customer service context, but it's also massively true in a social media context. I've been talking about this for years and years and years and years, that social media is much more like email or customer service than it is like direct marketing and sales. The people who are interacting with your business in Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest are, for the most part, people who are already aware of you and already your customers. This idea that even with Facebook ads and things like that social media is in and of itself a terrific way to get new customers from scratch is the biggest lie ever perpetrated on business.
I love it. That's the way we do a prediction. That was well done, Jay. As in order as what I would expect. That was awesome. I love it. So I talk about there's 2 podcasts I listen to every single day. I don't miss a beat. One of them being Ask Gary V, and one of them being your Jay Today. So let everybody know about give people a little bit more background about Social Pros and Jay Today, and I think honestly how you come up with that much value every day for 3 minutes is beyond me, and the fact that I can't get enough each time I think is something that everyone should be listening to, that Jay Today, your 3-minute clips.
Thanks, Bell. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's called Jay Today, 3 minutes, almost every day. jtoday.tv is the main page for it, but you can get it on YouTube. You can get it on iTunes as an audio blog or as a video blog. There's also clips every day on Facebook, etc. So I just talk about this stuff. I talk about business and life and social media and customer service and advice. I'm going to do a special episode, I think, tonight, which really probably has no value in it. There's really no lesson. I don't usually do that, but I had an unbelievable experience, crazy experience last night here at home that I'm going to probably do a video about this evening. So there's a teaser there. And then my main show is Social Pros, which I do every week. I've been doing it for almost 4 years. And every week we interview somebody who really is a leading voice in social media. Many of the people we have on the show do social media, manage social media for big brands. Brian's going to be on the show in a couple weeks, so looking forward to that, which is fantastic. And then my company, Convince and Convert Media, also runs the Content Pros podcast, a very popular blog, and we've got 3 more podcasts getting ready to launch, including our next one, which is called The Business of Story, which is a storytelling podcast that's mixed with marketing, run by a college professor. It's going to be an amazing show.
And remind us again when Hug Your Haters will be available.
Hug Your Haters, you can pre-order it now. I'll send you the Hatrix, which is a free poster of how people hate and where and why and when. I've already seen some orders come in since the show started, so thank you to you guys. Kisses to you. The book itself will be out first part of next year, but I'll start talking about it on the road and stuff here pretty soon. So I got to have it written. I've got it's due 60 days from today. I'm about a third done, so I'm doing okay. I'm all right.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Jay. I can still give you a thumbs up because the fingers are still good there. So
there's always a thumbs up now.
It is. There's always a thumbs up. So I truly appreciate the time. I know you've been on the phone and doing shows back to back. So
love to do it.
Always a pleasure, my friend. And we will be back again next week. I will not be from a Penske truck. I better have a house by then. I better not have broken fingers. But Rachel, anything last remarks?
No, I just want to give a big shout out to our community manager, Kristen Curtis, who is rocking the Twitters. And your notifications are going to be blowing up more than usual, Jay. There's a lot of activity out there, so I'll be responding for the next hour or so. But thank you again. It's been a huge treat. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Yeah, let's do it again when the book's done. I'll come back on and tell you what the rest of the story is.
Sounds great. That's the deal.
We'll do it.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.